Hey everybody, and welcome to the Freedom Adventure, the channel where we, one project at a time, take a decommissioned ambulance and slowly but surely convert it into our very own miniature Class C motorhome. So a few weeks ago, I ordered a hot water heater. I did a review video on that not too long ago. Everything looked good. The machine looked quality. I felt pretty good about the installation. All up until the final point when I went ahead and I hooked up power to the machine, and nothing. Matter of fact, not at all. The lights wouldn't even come on the control panel. I checked the fuses. I checked the electrical connections also. But still, unfortunately, nothing. Today, what I'm here to do is to go over a review video on the Fogatti InstaShower 8. Now granted, this was a little bit more expensive of a unit than the other one was. After all, that's why I bought the CountryMod, was a perceived value for what I was getting as to what the machine cost. Here's what I got on my doorstep this last Wednesday. We're going to go ahead and unbox this thing, take a look at it, give you some quick first impressions, and then we're going to install it in the ambulance camper conversion. So join me along the way as we do so. Now I will say, the last box that we opened, everything looked good too. So again, this is just first impressions, but let's see what we've got here. All right, much the same as the CountryMod. What we've got here is just some of the equipment that it comes with here on the top. And it looks like we've got the manual. We've got the control panel, as you can see. And this actually comes with something that the other one didn't. The other one, I had to use a butyl tape in order to install it into the rig itself. And this one looks like it comes with foam tape rather than the butyl. And the reason I know that is because I had watched some of the installation videos on the InstaShower 8 on YouTube just last week before I decided to actually go ahead and order this unit. Not sure how I feel about this foam tape, although removing it out of the vehicle might be a little easier. I might still use the butyl tape. We'll see when we get there. All right, key points for successful installation. Okay, so this is just the basic guide, how to hook it up to the wiring. Only 12 volts DC. Well, that's good because that's all we've got. Also shows which inlet is the hot, which inlet is the cold, and again, just some real basic connections. All right, these are the screws I can only assume will screw this into the camper. And one thing I'll say right off the bat here, guys, is these screws look a little bit more robust. Actually, these look a lot more robust than the Chinese hardware that the other one came with. These screws are a whole lot thicker. They look like they're going to hold up a lot better. And if you watch the last video, one of the screws actually just pure broke once I went to tighten it down with my impact. Now, we could argue whether or not you want to use an impact for that operation or not, but the fact of the matter is pretty cheesy hardware is what came with the CountryMod. This looks a lot better. All right, we're going to set this on the floor so I could get the unit out and put it on the counter here so you guys can check it out. Oh. The configuration on the back is a little bit different. The gas line's almost in identically the same area. The hot and the cold, however, well, I say that. The cold's in the same spot, give or take. The hot is not. So what that's going to do is require that I do a little bit of additional plumbing work, and I'm going to have to extend the hot out using my PEX line. Not a big deal. This stuff works pretty easy, but that is something that I'm going to have to do because I made the PEX line configuration specifically for the CountryMod. So the first thing I noticed something here is one of the very prime reasons that I ordered the CountryMod to begin with, and it's also the reason that as a secondary choice I went ahead and decided to choose the Fogatti InstaShower 8. And that reason is it's black. Now if you recall, on the CountryMod it claimed to be black. I paid $50 extra when I had it shipped to me. Rather than go with a white one, I wanted black in order to match some of the trim that I was going to have on the camper once I get to the exterior. And when I opened the CountryMod up, I was a little bit perturbed to find out that it was not in fact black, it was actually gray. As you can see, this is very black, and this is exactly what I wanted on the camper. So as far as that goes, I'm stoked. Okay, so with the unit open, everything looks pretty similar in configuration. Now, this is what I believe to be a pressure relief valve. Now, the pressure relief valve, if pressure gets too high, it's going to go ahead and purge the water out of here and then drain it right out of the front of the unit. As you can see right here, we've got a on and off switch. It is currently in the on position. I'm going to go ahead and push that into the off. That way it doesn't inadvertently power up once I go ahead and I apply the 12 volts power to this. And right below that switch is a fuse, and I'm going to pull that out of there. and just see. Okay, the fuse looks pretty well identical, guys, to what was in the CountryMod. Not a whole lot of difference there. Also, and I don't know if this is supposed to be here or not, but this has got a little gray pinch weld that goes around the edge right here, and I think what that is probably there to do is in order to reduce the rattling that this metal lid will make with this when you're running down the road. That's only speculation, of course, but that would make sense, because it is rubber and that would do that. And then there's also little foam pads or foam rubber pads right here that I believe are there to do much the same thing. This looks to be the control panel, and on the CountryMod this was covered up with like a steel shroud, but now we're just talking about little design differences. But at first glance, so far, I'm pretty impressed with what I'm seeing here. One more thing to state is this little red donut that goes around here. It is a very thick rubber, and I think what that's there to do is to protect the heat from the exhaust from heating up the metal lid and maybe causing damage to the metal. But looking at the back side of this is super thick. We're probably talking 3/4 of an inch or even thicker than that. But that's enough about the inside for now. Let's go ahead and check out the back side of this. What it appears here just at first glance, and this is not referencing to the owner's manual at all, but we've got a black and a white wire, and I do believe that's going to be your positive and your negative. And then of course these two, which already come with a little connector on them, and they look like a push in style connector where you just push the other half of this in. I believe that's for the control panel. What we've got here is the gas inlet, and one thing that I will mention here is this comes with the gas inlet fitting. This is a 3/8 inch flange fitting where your gas line hooks up directly to this. And looking back, my CountryMod did not have that fitting. It was a 1/2 inch MPT that came out, and I had to purchase one of these in order to make it work. I do wonder if that unit had been returned before and somebody had taken that fitting off of it, because that would make sense. Some of the review videos on the CountryMod showed it as having this, and I really wonder if maybe, just maybe, Amazon sent me a unit that had been returned and somebody had already been probably as disgusted as I was when they returned it, because you know what? It didn't work. Now the gas inlet is basically in the same location, so that's not going to be a problem. It's a gas hose that comes into that, so that'll connect up beautifully, no problem. The cold water inlet is here, and it looks like there's a little water inside of this. I'm assuming that's probably from testing, but it's in basically the same location as the cold water inlet on the CountryMod. And the hot water on the CountryMod was over here, and the hot water outlet is right here in this unit. Not a big deal. Like I said before, I'm just going to have to do a little bit of plumbing work in order to get this to work with the plumbing that I had already built for the CountryMod. All in all, this is going to be, from what I can see, a pretty easy install. Now, something to be said here is when I cut the hole for the CountryMod, I cut it at 12 3/4, which is the distance between here and here. So let's go ahead and grab a tape measure and see what we've got. Now, Fogatti says you can cut a hole up to 13 inches and it's not a problem. And when I went to reorder another unit after the failure of the CountryMod, that was important because I already had the hole in the camper. There's no going back from that, not unless you build some sort of jig or adapter or something along those lines in order to make it work. All right, so this is approximately 12 5/8, and if you go out here to where the screws are at the widest point, okay, so we are looking at just a little bit more than 12 3/4, but knowing my cutting skills, my money says that this fits the hole that I cut out, because I believe I got offline just a little bit when I was going to work with that jigsaw, so my gut tells me this is probably going to fit right in the hole. Okay, so in case of worst case scenario, it does look like Fogatti's got you covered. One thing I have heard about this company is their customer service is on point. Like, there's a lot of people out there that even when they have a product failure are stating that Fogatti's customer service is solid, and if they can't ship them parts, they'll just ship them another one. This is a return slip just in case the worst happens, and it's got different reasons for the return. Product can't be secondary sales. Okay, fine, whatever. Product startup failure, missing components in the box, product's been installed, the product is damaged, and it just gives reasons why a person might go ahead and return this. I don't know that I could take that kind of failure twice within 14 business days, so wish us luck. All right, so a quick review of the owner's manual is what I'm doing here, and again, this is just kind of the stats for the unit. Things I'm looking for here, or let's see, Total input current less than 10 amps. Okay. Well, this has an onboard fuse on the unit, but I'm still going to go ahead and put a fuse on this on the fuse panel. So I'll probably just throw a 15 amp in there just to make sure. If this thing draws any more than that, obviously there's a problem. Oh, it tells you about water pressure, the size of the gas inlet, the size of the cold and hot water inlet and outlet, electrical supply, and just pretty much all the statistics that you need to know in order to go ahead and install. One thing I will say is the instructions are pretty explicit. These are good instructions. It even talks about, you know, a switch for the hot water tank not really being required, but you can go ahead and install one as an option. And it goes as far as to tell you that the switch itself has to be greater than a 3 amp switch. That's pretty good information to know. This also mentions that it's got an onboard 10 amp fuse, which I showed you earlier, but it also states to go ahead and fuse it with a 15 amp, like I said I was going to use, and that was just guessing, but it looks like I guessed right. The instructions say to remove this door off of the unit, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this lid off of here now though, because once it's in the vehicle, I just want to get to work. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these 4 screws out and set the door to the side for safekeeping. Now, I'm going to go ahead, rather than use my impact, I'm going to use just a standard screwdriver. Okay, these things are in there tight. Man, that's not wanting to come out of there. A little afraid I'm going to strip these screws if I get too aggressive with this. Could be a couple different problems here. This could be just these things are in too tight and they don't want to move, but what I'm afraid is going to happen here is I'm going to strip this. That being said, I'm going to try to cheat this. I'm going to go ahead and sit the unit in. When this door is open, I've got straight access here for the mount holes. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and sit this into place, and we're not going to take that door off, not unless we have to. All right, the hole that I cut, like I said, is 12 3/4 by 12 3/4, and it's probably a little bit bigger than that. I'm not going to say that's perfect. I think what's probably a little bit bigger than the 12 3/4, and in this case, that's probably going to work in our favor. So let's see if this thing fits. All right, so we are probably a couple 16ths off from this thing fitting in this hole. I might be able to get it to force into position here, but just for the next guy, just in case I've even ever have to take this thing out, I think I'm going to go ahead and grab a grinder and get this hole elongated out just a little bit, just for, you know, planning for the future. Okay, now, once again, I don't have to take off much here. I probably could have forced that into position, but what we're going to do is take about a 1/16 of an inch off each side here. Maybe it's not required, but it'll make it a lot easier to go ahead and replace this in the future should that occasion arise. Let's try this again. Okay, looks like we're a little tight at the top here. So I'm going to try one other tool that I've got in my arsenal here. Man, that's looking good. That's much, much better. Something's locking me up at the bottom though. So we've got 2 fairly good sized fasteners coming out of the bottom about here and here. And I'm gonna have to notch in order to make clearance for those. I'm gonna clearance these up here because they are still a little bit tight. Same thing with these 2 top ones. And then we're gonna hog down where these little blue Sharpie marks are. 3rd time's a charm, right? Maybe a 4th time's a charm. There we go. Man, that's much, much easier. All right, so that is fitting as of now. And even better yet, it looks like it's fitting pretty straight in the opening too. All right, I'm gonna check the back side of this just to see what it looks like. All right, so I just want you guys to not only see how this looks on the outside, but I want to show you what it looks like on the inside also. As I said earlier, the piping on this was all done to cater to the CountryMod. This is now an InstaShower, or this is now the Fogatti rather. It's kind of the same, but different. Those little holes that I cut, or those little recesses, as you can see those fasteners, that's why I had to do it, because I had to clear that bottom lip with those fasteners. Looks like this thing might be a little bit deeper than the CountryMod, but again, we're talking little trivial differences and they're not going to be hard to overcome. So at this point, I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and mark the holes so we can go ahead and pre-drill for this unit. Once that thing is pre-drilled, I'm going to go ahead and mount it in there using the butyl tape. And then at that point, we're ready to go ahead and start doing some plumbing. So once again, talking about the hardware that came with this, these screws are a lot bigger than what held in that CountryMod. And I love the fact that the holes that they put in this unit are so much bigger than what were on the CountryMod, and it's going to give me a much better grip on the aluminum skin on this camper. I guess I'm going to measure this real quick and just see kind of, does this look straight? It looks straight, but the tape measure will tell me the truth here. We got 2 1/4, 2 1/4. Man, that's good enough. It's good enough for what I do here. So I'm not going to drill this with the unit in place. I don't want to booger anything up. And on top of that, I've got to put the butyl tape down. What that'll also give me an opportunity to do is to make sure every one of these blue dots that I put down is not going to be too close to the inner edge. And that's something that I also ran into with that CountryMod. One other thing I'll mention is this is just kind of a raw steel case. The CountryMod, I believe, was painted, and I was constantly worried about scratching that paint up as I put it in the camper. Not that that's a big deal, but I mean, this just has a little bit higher quality feel to it, just being the raw. Oh, I don't think that's stainless. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's stainless, I don't know, but it just has a higher quality feel than the CountryMod did. Going back and looking at where I put these holes in to drill the holes, you can see these little bitty holes here were what held that CountryMod in there. And those don't matter at this point because it's going to be sealed up with that butyl tape, right? So that's not a big deal. But you could see each one of these holes here is approximately a 1/2 inch away from the edge. And what that means is when I drill this, even under vibration, it's not going to break through. And I was a little worried about some of these because they're just so dadgum close to the edge. These little recesses that I buzzed down with that belt sander, I'm going to buzz this one down a little bit further, and also this one, notch this a little further towards the inside. This butyl tape, and this is the same tape I used to install my Max Air fan, is just awesome stuff. There's no doubt that this will be waterproof when this is on here. It's I'm going to say it's 1/8 of an inch thick. It's probably 3/4 of an inch wide, and it's pliable. It's got the consistency of a really dense Play-Doh. And as you can see here, turns and goes around corners beautifully. And the reason I'm using this rather than that tape, I just feel like it'll seal better. Now, you don't have to use this, but I've gotten into the habit, and this is just a neat little tool that I ordered on Amazon. They're pretty inexpensive, but basically it's spring-loaded, and you put this where you want to drill your hole, and what it does is it punches just a tiny little indentation into the metal, which helps locate the tip of your drill bit. That way it's much less prone to walk on you when you go to pre-drill. Telling you, sometimes it's these little $5 and $10 tools that make a job go a whole lot easier. And I guess you could use glass cleaner for this too. I'm just using lacquer thinner because it's got amazingly fast dry time, and I also want it very dry when I put it down on here as well. Boy, it is just shredding that old paper towel there. Okay. Hopefully all those screw holes that I just drilled line up like they're supposed to. All right, guys, so there it is. It's in the camper. And the screws that it came with were 10 times the quality as the screws that came with that CountryMod. So next up on the task list is going to be to go ahead and do the plumbing. So this is what I've come up with. Everything's not locked into position in its final place right now. I've still got to take it apart and crimp a bunch of PEX rings on this to hold it in place. You can see it's a little bit different than what it was, just a little bit shorter lines here and there to accommodate for the longer unit. One thing, and I don't know if you guys suffer from this, but one thing that always costs me a lot of time, and it doesn't really matter, but I get hung up on the aesthetics of things. Like I said, it's cost me a ton of time over the years, but if you can make it functional, that's great. However, if you can make it functional and look good, that's even better. Like I said, it is a waste of time in some instances, but it really does make for a cleaner job in the long run. Let's go ahead and hit some power to that water pump and see if anything's leaking. The last time I did this, it was, so we're definitely going to check. Here we go. Okay, so far so good. Nope, we got a leak, All right, so something just wanted to make a quick mention of is the reason that it was leaking is I did in fact forget the Teflon tape. My bad, it's fixed now. I've just got to tighten these down. All right, guys, we have a fresh coat of Teflon in place. Fittings are back tight once again, and my mess is now dried up. So let's turn it on one more time and see what we have. Getting the air out of the system. All right, let's go check the fittings again to make sure we don't have any more leaks. Don't see anything spewing. That's always a good sign. No moisture on the bottom of the inlet and the outlet. Guys, I think we're good. Okay, next thing's next, which is going to be to go ahead and hook up this gas line. Now, in the previous video, I had put the yellow Teflon on here, and I thought you were supposed to do that. Watching a little bit more content, turns out you are not. So I'm going to go ahead and just hook this up. And once we get everything hooked up, we'll go ahead and do a little test on that and just make good and sure that it is not leaking. Not normally a fan of crescent wrenches, but rather than running back and forth between my toolbox looking for the correct size wrench and for what we're doing here, I do believe this will be just fine. And now I'm going to reference to the manual real quick to figure out if there's a difference in these blue wires. If there is, I certainly would know how to tell it. All right, so I've got the control panel here, and I just spent about the last 10 or 15 minutes looking for it. Okay, so both of them are blue. Polarity doesn't matter. And we'll go ahead and pin these into position. Okay, done. So what that leaves, pressure's working, power's up. Just go ahead and pop a fuse in the panel right quick. I got to turn the propane on. Okay, at this point, I don't hear anything leaking in terms of the propane. So let's go ahead and we'll shut that. Go ahead and see if this power's on, see what happens. Okay, something clicked. The control panel just came to life. And guys, this is further than we got with the CountryMod. I could assure you that when I went to do this, there was absolutely no life on the control panel. 107, 109. I guess these are just default settings, or at least that's where it was set at. It's under Fahrenheit right now at 78. That's where it's currently at. All right, it's set at 105. I guess at this point, we just turn on some water and see if anything happens. One thing I will note right now is it's taking a measurement of the water that's in the system. And right now, it looks like it's at 78. Let's see if we can get that temperature up some. I'm going to turn the hot water on and we'll see what happens. Okay, the pump is on. Guys, we have hot running water. This is awesome. Now, I'm going to have to take a look at this. I thought I read somewhere that 114 may be the hottest this thing heats it up to. After referencing to the instruction manual, it says that this thing's got an operating temperature up to 123. Let's see if it'll do that. Let's see what it'll do. We'll go ahead and crank this up. Okay, it looks like 123 was where she set at. We're going to go ahead and turn the water on, and we're not going to turn it on super high. Set at 120, so we're at 113, 102. Water's, ooh, man, yeah. Woo, yeah, that's getting hot. Okay, yeah, that's, ooh, man, that's really hard to hold your hand under right there. I do believe this thing will reach the 123 mark. I don't think that would be a problem. I do not, however, think we'll be turning it up to 123 too often. That's just insane. So without a doubt, I could definitely tell you that the Fogatti InstaShower 8 is miles ahead of the CountryMod that I installed last week. In terms of its fit and finish, I'm really impressed with it, folks. You've got the stainless casing around the backside of it. It actually came in black, which was something that I wanted, and on the CountryMod, it ended up coming in gray. That was kind of a pain point, which I made apparent in that video. They advertised it as black, and of course it comes in gray. This also has better hardware. It comes with a sort of a great pre-filter on the water coming inside of the unit. On top of all that, you don't have to go buy any fittings for this. in terms of the gas line. It comes with the proper 3/8 inch flange fitting that on the CountryMod, I had to go to the store and actually purchase that. Now, that could have very well been an Amazon return thing, and if that's the case, shame on you, Amazon, and shame on you, CountryMod, both. That unit should have never been sent out to the public again, and it was just a complete and utter waste of my time. But most importantly, in terms of this thing's performance, it worked. By gosh, it worked. The control panel came on. It allowed me to set the temperature I wanted the hot water to come out at, and when I did that, the hot water actually came out at that temperature. In its simplest form, guys, it works. Now, this thing had a lot of good reviews on it, and from what I understand, Fogatti's customer service is second to none. I hope I don't have to find that out, but if I do, that's reassuring. In its simplest form, though, folks, the thing works as it's supposed to. Now, here in a few months, after we get a chance to go ahead and use this in a real life scenario and we actually go camping, I'll circle back around and kind of do a recap on it and tell you how it's working at that point after we have a chance to use it in the real world. Well, folks, that's really all I've got for you in terms of the water heater review. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if this is something you do enjoy, or if you've gotten any value out of this at all, consider liking and subscribing to the channel in order to keep the videos coming. Not only that, but it'll allow you to go back and see some of the previous videos that we've done. Until then, guys, I really hope I see you next time, but happy adventures, and I'll see you then.